Regulating Act of 1773 was the first act that was passed by the British Parliament to regulate the affairs of the company in India. We all know that in 1764, the East India Company fought the Battle of Buxar and defeated the combined armies of Shah Alam II, Shuja-ud-Daula, the Nawab of Awadh, as well as Mir Qasim, the Nawab of Bengal. This Battle of Buxar, was fought with the help of the Royal Army. Therefore, in 1766, the British Parliament, it passed an act via which the company was required to pay 400,000 pounds annually to the British because it had acquired those territories. In fact, the Treaty of Allahabad was possible only because of the Battle of Buxar. So the company in 1766, it had a liability of paying 400,000 pounds annually to the British government, to the home government, to the home agency back in England. As per the Treaty of Allahabad, the company had to pay 26 lakh of annual subsidy to Shah Alam II. So 26 lakh of rupees was to be paid annually to Shah Alam II. And the treaty that was signed with the Nawab of Bengal, the company was required to pay 53 lakh rupees to the Nawab for the Nizamat functions. So effectively, the company was required to pay 26 lakh of rupees to Shah Alam, and the company was required to pay 53 lakh rupees to Nawab Najmuddaulah. So the company by 1767 effectively had a liability to pay 400,000 pounds to England, 26 lakhs to Shah Alam II, and 53 lakhs to Nawab. Robert Clive established dual government in Bengal. The company's servants indulged in private trade. All the expenses were accounted in the accounts of the company, and the company's servants and officials, they made profits. We see in 1767 onwards, there were famines in Bengal. So effectively, the revenue of the company was undergoing a decline and its expenses were mounting. In 1769, the company, it was in debt to the tune of 6 million pounds. The British, especially the British Parliament, was amazed, was shocked, because the company officials, servants, they came back to England with pockets full of gold. They came to England with a lot of riches because of the exploits of Bengal. And the company, it was under debt in 1769. In fact, the company applied for a loan. The company declared a dividend of 12.5%. However, it was still defaulting. It was filing for bankruptcy. Therefore, in 1772, a select committee of Parliament was formed to look into the affairs of the company. And this formed the basis to the Regulating Act of 1773. Let us see the features of the Regulating Act of 1773. The Regulating Act of 1773, for the first time, it required the company to submit all its communications, all its records, whether it is civil, military, commercial, to the British authorities. So generally what used to happen, that back in England there were court of directors, and in India there were the company officials. So we have already discussed, we used to have the three presidencies. For example, we had the Calcutta presidency, we had the Bombay presidency, we had the Madras presidencies. All these three presidencies used to individually submit their accounts, their records to court of directors who were in England. Now these court of directors previously acted as a private company, but now these court of directors were required to submit all the records, all their communications to the British Parliament. Therefore, for the first time, the British Parliament came to regulate the affairs of the company. And the British Parliament, via Regulating Act of 1773, it made the Governor of Bengal as the Governor General. So basically, the Governor of Bengal now could superintend, he could also communicate with the other presidencies. The Governor of Bengal, he could superintend the affairs of the Madras presidency as well as Bombay presidency. We might remember the Anglo-Maratha wars, whereby Bombay presidency in 1776 signed the Treaty of Surat with Raghunath Rao. However, the council, the Governor General Council, it shall be contesting it, and a Treaty of Purandar would be signed. So when I'm talking about the Regulating Act of 1773, the most important aspect was Governor of Bengal was made Governor General, so that he could superintend the other two presidencies. The second major provision was the Governor General was provided with a council. Now this was a very important provision under the Regulating Act of 1773, and this council was to be comprising of 4 members. Right? So we already know that who was the first Governor General? It was Warren Hastings. He was the first Governor General, and the 4 council members, they were Francis, Monson, Barwell, and Clavering. Now these were the 4 council members. Now when the Regulating Act of 1773 was passed, it was passed in 1773, but Warren Hastings came to India, or he was present in India in 1772. Now here Barwell was already present in India when this Regulating Act of 1773 was passed. Francis, Monson, and Clavering, all these 3, they were in Europe. So they had to sail all the way from Europe to India, and it took 1 year. So when they arrived in 1774, all these 3, they had formed a triumvirate. They formed a group against Warren Hastings and Barwell. So this council, it will cause a lot of trouble to the Governor General, who was Warren Hastings. So this council forms a very important component of the Regulating Act of 1773. So we see the second provision of the Regulating Act of 1773 was formation of a council. The third important aspect, or third important characteristic feature, was formation of Supreme Court. A Supreme Court was established in Calcutta. However, The Regulating Act of 1773 did not clearly demarcate the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. Anyway, the important aspect was an attempt was made to separate judiciary with legislation. So in this time period, the executive and the legislation, it was one and the same. It was in a common Governor General and Council. However, if I'm talking about formation of Supreme Court, an attempt was made to separate judiciary with that of legislation. But the jurisdiction of this Supreme Court was not clearly demarcated. So when we talk about Regulating Act of 1773, it is one of the first attempts which were made by the British Parliament to regulate the affairs of the company. And this act was characterized by severe defects, shortcomings. The first major shortcoming was the Governor General of Bengal, or the Governor General, he could superintend the other presidencies, but many of the times the other presidencies, they acted independently. Secondly, there was friction between Governor General and the Council. I told you, Francis, Monson and Clavering, all these three, they will form a triumvirate. So we have already studied that there was the Chait Singh, the Begums of Awadh, Rohilla War. So all these three, they asked Warren Hastings that they want all the records to be placed before them. And Warren Hastings was disgusted. In fact, in 1775, he offered a resignation. But in 1776, Monson, he will die. So Francis was the head of these triumvirate. And after his death, now Warren Hastings, he was able to get the veto power because he had support of Barwell. Barwell was with Warren Hastings. And along with his support, he was able to counter Francis and Clavering. So the point is, the Governor General Council was a major bone of contention between Governor General and his council. There was formation of Supreme Court. It was one of the earliest attempts so as to establish judiciary. However, its territorial jurisdiction was not clearly demarcated, something which was aimed at correcting via amending Act of 1781. So the Regulating Act of 1773 was amended in 1781 to clearly demarcate the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court established in Calcutta. So this was the first act, the Regulating Act of 1773.